hand models and all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
hand models. Don't be careful of my hands.
Yeah, they're insured.
They're insured by Lloyd's of London.
Hey, what new inventories come in?
Hey, Steve, thanks for that great segue. How about the Shelby GTH Tribute, black, raven black over black? It's a fully restored, miles deep raven black paint. I mean, you could dive into it, it looks like.
It is.
And it's rust-free, 289 V8 with a top loader manual. And it goes like gel, but I think that means it meant to say hell.
Goes like gel. That's interesting. Like black Jello. Is it a manual?
It is a top loader. I don't know.
I thought it was. I know. Let me stutter a little more.
Yeah.
while you look it up, because
Yeah.
we had some conversation about GTHs actually did come with an automatic and a manual. In fact, 40% of them were automatics,
Right.
which I did not know. I thought they all must have been stick because they're super racy and fancy.
Well, it's amazing how much information you know about cars these days.
Everyone is a research project.
For those of you who don't know, as I'm trying to Google something and I'm not doing it very well, Steve now writes all of our descriptions for all of our cars. It's a 4-speed manual, it
Okay,
says,
all right.
but wait a minute. Let me tell you one way to know.
Photographs.
You look at that photograph.
We
I'll
have
tell you.
85 photographs of
Yeah,
this car.
there's the 3 pedals in that one.
Okay, good. So it just brought, that car brought up a conversation. Maybe I was talking to Justin or somebody about did GTHs come automatic, and they did.
Right. And you know what's funny? Shelby Mustangs in the automatic guise used to be that it was very difficult. When I say guys, I don't mean GUIS. I mean GUISE. And its form came in automatic, and people used to not care for the automatic. When you would try to sell an automatic Shelby Mustang of any year era, they were hard to sell. Now people like them because there's a couple things about a manual transmission. If you're in a parade or any kind of slow traffic, your left leg goes to sleep pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Number one. And number two, when you're driving on the highway or down the turnpike or down the interstate, if you only have a 4-speed manual, you're dying for another gear. If you got an automatic, got a little more breathing room to run a little bit faster speeds without sounding like the thing's going to blow up.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And this is just back to this car, because I mean, it's a beautiful car.
It really is.
And you could drive this without the worry of having a 6-figure actual GTH, and nobody would know the difference.
No, they wouldn't. And of course, it argues or begs the question, how do you, if somebody comes up to you at a car show, do you immediately lead with, this is a replica, or this is a clone, or this is a tribute, or all the different names that we use for those.
If I had a placard in front of the car, it would definitely say.
You would say that,
it's a
but
tribute.
do you lead with that if that's your car at a car show? Is that the first thing you would tell somebody? They come up and say, "Hey, man, that's a nice car."
I think this one is so well done that I would
Right.
have no problem leading with that information. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of it. I mean, it's a tribute, which means it's a recognition or an honor of the original,
That's
and
right.
not everybody can afford an original.
It's like an Elvis tribute artist.
Or a Cobra, a 427 Cobra replica. I mean, of course, not many people can afford those at all.
That's right.
Not many people have seen one in person. That's the interesting thing about the one we have here, is that most people that come in here, even degenerate car guys like we are, say, I've never seen one in person.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that tells you a lot about how rare they really are. But everybody knows what it is, and everybody's seen a version of it out at whatever car show. But even my little replica that I have, I pull up anywhere to car guys, and they're all over it. They're oogling it. They're oogling.
It is the ultimate. That is the ultimate car guy.
It really
car.
is. And that's why we have this right behind us.
Yeah, it is.
And if you're listening, this is a black and white picture of a Cobra, or a version of a Cobra, I don't know. But anyway, with the knockoff wheels and the Goodyear white wall tires and the wind wings and the little jacks back here and all cool stuff. So anyway, if you get a chance, check our website out, classicautomall.com. You can see the GTH Tribute. Also in this week, new inventory, 1957 Triumph TR3 Roadster. Have you seen this thing? It is so cool.
Oh, I like
black
that car.
over red.
Yeah.
1991 cc inline 4, which was more power than most of the British cars had in that era. Dual SU carbs, 4-speed manual, leather seating, just a really neat looking car. The black is very industrial looking for this car, but it's really, if you get a chance, again, go to our website and check it out. It's very, very cool.
See, these were the early racing cars in America. This was the early sports car movement, and Triumphs and MGs and all those cars were raced.
When the guys came back from World War II,
That's right.
After they'd been in Europe and they saw MGs and Triumphs and Austin Healey's and all these British cars, they all wanted one.
That's right.
They were all like, "Oh man, we need one of those over here." And the ones that had the wherewithal, the financial wherewithal to do it, and or just the gumption to make it happen, either imported them over and I imagine the United States military probably brought quite a few of them back over on, a little extra room in a big cargo plane.
Right,
Can you throw my MG on there?
Yeah, and again, to call back the Holbert family, that's really how he made his bread and butter, is servicing MGs in the 50s when nobody was servicing.
Nobody, nobody knew how to work on them. Volkswagens were the same way.
Yeah.
They were just
foreign cars.
Foreign car.
Yep.
But this little TR3 is really, really cool. You don't see many of these, and it's funny. The door opening on the sill is so low to the ground, you almost feel like your elbow is going to drag on the ground.
You could literally reach out
and touch the ground. Yeah.
It's very cool. That's the way the MGs were to a point too, the TGs and TFs.
And people not
TG, TD.
TD and TF and Well, what people don't realize too is they say, "Oh, you got to have a big American V8 to go fast and have fun driving a car." That's absolutely not true. A little sports car like a little TR3 or an MG or an Austin Healey, even the Sprite, they're a blast to drive at full gate.
This Triumph in particular made me want to look at 50s era.
Yeah, it makes you re-engage with that. Maybe I could have one.
I like my Z3, but there's something very charming about those.
They're charming and they're easy to work on too. So they're not expensive to work on, and they're easy to work on.
And at least in this area, there's a lot of guys who know these cars really well.
Yeah, it's amazing how many shops there are within, that are specialized in a type or style or a specific mark that do work around here.
Yeah.
And you find them, and a lot of times it's just a guy in his garage that's a separate piece of his house that he just gets out there and works on cars. And
very active clubs in this area, and probably the rest of the country too. Triumph clubs, MG clubs, and these guys know their stuff.
And we highly recommend that if you buy a particular car, whether it's a muscle car, whether it's an MG or a Triumph, get involved with the club.
For sure.
And it's a wealth of information. And you think, well, I can get everything I need on the internet. No, you can't. There's a lot of stuff. You can't get a true feel for if a guy is the right guy to work on your car or do body work on your car. You need to talk to people that have had it done.
Exactly.
First-hand experience on that, not just some Google review that the guy's pissed off and writes something harsh about him when it may or may not be true. But get involved with the clubs because, so number one, finding parts and things that are difficult to find is the best way to find them. And especially a lot of these guys are still old school enough that they don't do eBay and they don't.
That's exactly right.
They go to the swap meet. Why do you think Carlisle and Hershey are still so popular?
That's exactly right.
I mean, you would think that people would say, you know what, I don't want to buy a bumper and drag it all through the field to get to my car.
Right.
But people still do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to say I'm the youngest one at Carlisle at the swap meets, but it's an older crowd, and these are old school guys, man, and they know way more than we could ever learn. Yeah,
it's funny. If you don't know what a part goes to, you just put it on your table at Carlisle, and somebody will come up and tell you what it's for.
For sure.
Like, well, that's a starter for a '57 Triumph.
It's amazing.
The breadth of knowledge out there that isn't found on the internet. I mean, those are things that you can't always necessarily. Just because it's out there on the internet doesn't mean that you can find it. Googling is an art in of itself.
It's tough. And really some of the best places are the forums where people are talking about it and recommend somebody, through reputation.
Yeah, you ought to check with him if you want to know about something.
So it's the conversations more than the sort of general information sheet.
And the way you Google things determines the way the response is. And sometimes I can have people say, well, I Googled it and I couldn't find it. And I Google it and I find it right away. And I say, well, what'd you put in? And it was something...
Right.
It was something that didn't dovetail into finding the right information that you want.
That is right.
Yeah, so Googling is an art. Maybe we could teach that. We could have a Google class. Anyway, 61 Chevrolet Corvette convertible roadster, tuxedo black and silver over red. This has got some interesting rock star provenance.
Oh, it does?
Yeah. Joey Kramer of Aerosmith owned this car, the drummer for Aerosmith.
Okay.
Owned this car. Apparently there is some serious documentation of this.
Okay,
or
good.
whatever, names.
Little provenance.
Little provenance. Near flawless restoration. NCRS and Bloomington Gold winner. Numbers matching 283, 270 horse V8. Just very correct example. It's really an amazing car. It ain't cheap,
right?
But
if you want a good restoration.
And, of course, the interesting thing about the 61 and 62 Corvettes is that you would get a preview of the tail of the 63s, the Stingrays. And that tail was different and got them going in that direction. Right. So you're almost seeing a preview. And, of course, you didn't know it at the time. And, of course, when the 63s came out, people thought spaceships had landed on them. I mean, they were really revolutionary to people when they first came out. It was pretty interesting. And, of course, the Stingray was pinned by Pete Brock, who did the Cobra Daytona.
Wow.
So he worked for Bill Mitchell, who had a contest over the design of the coupe. And Pete Brock won. I guess, I don't know if that's the correct word, but, they built it with lightness in mind and an independent rear end, and beyond that, they could do anything they wanted. So when we return, we'll finish up our new inventory and talk about a couple other things. I've got a bone to pick, too. Not with you, just good. In general. So when we return to the Classic Auto Mall podcast, we'll see you in a minute.
Whether you want to buy or sell a classic, collectible, or special interest vehicle, you need to visit the Classic Auto Mall website for more information. If you're looking to buy, you can easily search our inventory of more than 1,000 vehicles on the web at classicautomall.com.
And we're back with the Classic Auto Mall podcast. We're talking about our new show we're going to do from here, a music show, Stewart's Toy Box or something.
Stewart's Music Emporium.
Or something like that. We'll have to come up with some catchy name for it. We want to do a program. We use the studio 52 hours a year, basically.
That's right.
And there's how many hours in a year?
52 and a half if technical stuff breaks.
How many hours are in a year? In a year? How many hours?
1080 in a week.
Yeah.
So what is that? 30,000.
And we use it for 55 hours. So
right.
We're going to figure out a way to use it more and do a cool music show. Something from my background of the 70s and 80s stuff and 60s stuff that I've listened to.
And then croutons. We're going to do food.
And then a food show as well, too, and talk about croutons. Anyway, some of the other new inventory you were just asking about the one sitting across the hallway, which we're not featuring this week, but we'll feature coming up. A 1916 Cole Touring. They made 40,000 of those, and there's like 79 accounted for, which is unusual because, there's a lot of Fords and Chevys. Of course, they made millions and millions and millions, but there's cars that they made less of that there's way more than 79 still around and about. So
interesting.
Anyway, one of the other new pieces of inventory in 1949 Chrysler New Yorker Highlander convertible. The Highlander, I guess, was the top of the line. It's yellow over oxblood with that cool plaid Highlander interior. It's really a cool looking car. Fluid drive semi-automatic, which means it doesn't have a clutch in the true sense of the word. It's kind of a hybrid between an automatic and a manual.
Okay.
You have to shift it, but you don't have to use a clutch, except for when you're stopped. And I don't know. I don't quite understand. It's an L-head inline six, 323 cubic inches. It was the top of the line. They only 1,137 of these built. So that's not a lot. And especially 1949. I mean, that's 75 years ago. How many survived? Gosh, hard to say. I mean, like that Cole. I mean, how many, and people say, but these cars are babied and they're taken care of and they're garaged. But there's attrition. There's hurricanes and there's floods and there's tornadoes and there's fire and there's there's accidents. Not very often. I mean, you look at some of the insurance companies that insure specifically classic cars, and they'll tell you it's a pretty lucrative business because people, these cars don't get parked on the street. Right. They're not baby. They're babied like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it's a different animal than your beater daily driver.
Yeah, right, exactly. But a lot of these cars were daily drivers back in the day, and that's the thing. That's why there's so few cars of some models and makes less. I wrote up the GTX yesterday, 67 GTX, first year GTX, and they were just everyday cars.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day,
nobody thought it was like going to be a special muscle car,
right?
And now it's a legend, and who knows how many are left.
Well, you can remember that the Mopar stuff in the '60s didn't drive that great. They were they were loose feeling.
Yeah,
they were different. They didn't feel. I always thought that the General Motors cars in the 60s and 70s had a much more solid feel to them than the Mopar products. Podcast
at classicautomall.com. His name's Stewart, and you can
give me all kinds of grief.
That's right.
But I don't know, the Pontiacs and the wide track that they did back in the 60s, they all just felt like they were more solid cars. And I think that the Mopar sales when you used to see Hemi Superbirds in the mid 70s selling for $3,500 on a car lot, I mean, you think, my God, you could have bought every one of them, and you should have. So anyway, but an interesting Chrysler nonetheless. Also, the 1959 Oldsmobile Dynamic 88 Fiesta station wagon. That is the coolest thing ever.
There cannot be that many left in the country.
Light blue and Polaris white over blue and white. It was one of 11,000 built, but I guarantee you there ain't 11,000 left.
Nope.
Probably not 1,000
They were
left.
used and rusted and left out in the rain and everything.
This one's got known history from new. 371 cubic inch V8, the Jetaway automatic. Certainly the family truckster cruiser. You know, no question about it. And really I was going to say dynamic looking vehicle, but that's the name is a Dynamic 88. So maybe that's, you know, par for the course.
It's got just so many curves and lines and gaps. It's just a very cool car. And stay tuned for TikTok because I want to do a video on it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Check out our TikTok. It's quite popular. We do well on that. And our Instagram account, we're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, as we talked about.
Right.
All the podcast sites, Spotify and iTunes and iHeartRadio and all of that. And including America's Web Radio, which is the first place you can hear it every Saturday at 10 a.m. So that's where the new releases come out for the first time. And then they go the following Monday on all the sites.
Exactly.
And so you can get a sneak preview, if you will.
Exactly.
On the America's Web Radio.
And listen as many times as you want.
Absolutely. And last but not least, the 1965 Pontiac Le Mans convertible. Boy, this thing is spectacular. Blue charcoal over blue. It's got a tri-power induction, 1966 421 cubic inch V8 in it. The Muncie M20. This thing's a beast. And it's gorgeous. It looks, you know, it's the same body as the GTO. It's basically a GTO, a wolf in sheep's clothing or something we like to say. And it's got the Hearst edition. It looks like the Hearst edition Le Mans. It's got Hearst wheels and that really just sets it off. And then the tri-power and the 421 and then the paint job on this thing is
amazing.
Really beautiful.
It is. Yeah.
And the color is elegant, I guess would be the best word you could use to describe that color. It's just a very striking, beautiful car with a contrasting top. And it's a power top too as well, which is, you know, comes in handy sometimes.
Wow.
Those manual tops can be a little tricky sometimes.
It's a beautiful car.
Yeah, it really is. So if you haven't seen all of these cars or you haven't been to our place, go check them out on our website, classicautomall.com, and click on inventory. You can search by year, make, model, and we also have a reset button. So if you start searching and get too far down a rabbit hole, you hit the reset button and you can start over.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Classic Auto Mall podcast with your host, Stewart Howden.